Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley, and this is our second historic church in Nottinghamshire. This is the church of St Winifred, Kingston upon Kingston on Soar. Now, as the name suggests, Kingston is literally just down the road from Ratcliffe, so it's very, very fitting to visit the two one after the other. And whereas Ratcliffe is a very old church, has Anglo-Saxon origins, the oldest part of the church here at Kingston is the chancel, not the one behind me. There's another chancel on the south side, but that other chancel, which dates from 1538 and was built by the Babington family. The present church was built in 1900, so it's only just over almost 125 years old, basically. And this church replaced a church built in the 1830s, which itself replaced the older building. And all that's been left in both those rebuildings is this chancel that we'll see, which is spectacular. It's one of the most amazing pieces of Tudor architecture that there is. Just as the chancel was built by the Babington family, so this was built by Lord Belper, and it was built in memory of his son. It's a building that's been designed to fit in with the chancel, so it is a sort of perpendicular-ish, Tudor-ish style. And we'll see some of that as we go around. So, without further ado, shall we go around the church? And so, as usual, West End. Ratcliffe and Kingston make quite an interesting contrast, because Ratcliffe is an ancient building that's grown up over time. Kingston is almost entirely of a piece and is essentially of one style, because the new bit is imitating some of the old bit. This is, as I've said, alabaster country, and so we have this font. This is from 1900, and you can see it's a bird bath type alabaster font. So that is the font, and we'll do a bit of a scan around the interior. You can see there's the old chancel, and there's the current chancel. The old chancel's become a side chapel, not unusual. We have the roll of honour, those who served in the Great War and those killed in action. And as usual, as you see here, you've got Major A.H. Strutt, 3rd Baron Belper, who is the highest ranking officer. That's unsurprising. We'd also note again this point that the upper classes didn't stay at home and have other people do the fighting for them. You still have that medieval ideal of the military aristocracy, who they were the officers. So the pulpit is quite straightforward, this little wooden box. We have here an early 20th century stained glass window. This is the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath, so this is Christ and his disciples going through the harvest field before being challenged by the Pharisees. You shouldn't be doing that. And here we have the glory of the whole thing, the tomb canopy of the Babingtons. I mean, look at that. Glorious, isn't it? And the carving here is incredibly detailed. And you will notice here all these men with barrels, because of course Babington or ton, it's what they call a rebus, a pun on the name. So it's not a crest, but it's a pun on the name Babington, and these men beating their tons, you see. The carving is incredibly intricate. We've still got some painting. You can see that. I mean, look at the quality here. This is incredibly fine. There we have some arms, and here we have some more arms. It would have been painted, of course, and you can still see what we saw with these men with their tons, some paint surviving, and so it would have been this glorious multicoloured extravaganza, and it really just emphasises the wealth of the period. And here we have the east window, the Ascension, in memory of Henry II Baron Belper, and he is the man who is responsible for building the church The reredos is alabaster, simple, there's no figures on it, but alabaster. And the sedilia here are rescued from the old church. And up here we have memorial to first Baron Belper, who died in 1890. And then memory of William Strutt, who is the son of the second Baron, in whose memory the church is built, or rebuilt rather. And so we look around here, and there we have the organ at the back of the aisle, and also at the back of the aisle is the tower, because of course the aisle represents basically the footprint of the old church. There would have been something out this end, and under the tomb canopy here, at the east end of the tomb canopy, we have the Last Judgment. You can see here, there is Christ sitting in judgment, and here we have, on the one hand, you've got the saved being ushered into the New Jerusalem. On the other hand, the damned are being swallowed up by a quite literal mouth of hell. Medieval eschatology. This is just pre-Reformation, basically. And then here we have the east window, the original east window. Now, of course, the window itself, the glass, is Victorian. It's in memory of Arthur Strutt. And we have texts. We've got the just shall live by faith. God is our hope and strength. Bear one another's burdens. And then faith, hope, and love. Algernon Henry Strutt, 3rd Baron Belper. He died in 1956. And here we have some of the tons of the Babingtons. It's a gorgeous building. This is Tudor, but it's just pre-Reformation. Obviously, Henry and the real Reformation isn't something Henry VIII is very interested in. It's during Edward's time that it really begins. Before then, it's just whatever they can get away with. And here we have your, as you can see here, you've got your Babington, you've got your babas with their tons, these two little boys with no clothes on. Very typical of the period. But the Babingtons would have built the whole church, and just this east end survives from that. Kingston probably begins not as Kingston, that is the King's Township, but as Kingston, that is the royal stone, that there would have been a stone memorial. And this is originally to St. Wilfred's, but it's changed to St. Winifred's. One suspects that someone couldn't read somebody else's handwriting correctly and got it wrong, because that is not at all unusual, shall we say. And so into, well, the aisle now, and you can see here you've got and this is this is mid-20th century now, certainly from the styles, that's 1950s. And it's the two sacraments, baptism and the Lord's Supper. Again, Anglican, so it's portrayed in Anglican terms. So that's the inside here. It's a peculiar little building because the whole thing's been rebuilt, just leaving just this beautiful, beautiful Tudor, very late medieval chancel. So let's have a look around the outside now. And so here we are now outside. Sorry, that's the train going past. We're outside at St. Winifred's, Kingston on Soar. Now, behind me, so he's stepping back so you can see, is the Tudor chancel. And that, of course, is the oldest part of the church. It's all that remains of a modest, probably, or certainly modest Tudor building on the site. And all the rest that you see is 1900. And it's a great example of building of that period even. So we'll look around the outside and again point out these features and the distinction between the two periods represented here. So here we are. So we start with the chancel because that's the oldest part of the building, and it's a very good thing that's been preserved, because quite often these late medieval structures were despised by Victorians, because a lot of Victorian architects looked at them and said, well, they had a false idea of how styles developed, and so they said, well, it's debased late medieval, and we say, but that's not how styles work. It's that it's late medieval, but that's what they did in those days. The rest is somewhat perp, somewhat decorated. I'm saying that tower is a bit more perp, a bit more Tudor, but those windows are much more 14th century in the nave. Of course, it's all 1900, but it's a very good thing that they preserve the building as is in terms of the chancel. And then you can see here we've got the new chancel is imitating the old, and certainly is using some old stone, because that stone is very, very different. So that then is preserved, and it's respecting what exists already, which is always a good idea, any sort of rebuild. Of course, here we have the strut graves. These are very, very grand, and there's the vestry sticking off on the north side. You always put a vestry on the north side, always a good idea. They're normally on the side facing away from the village. And actually, I take it back, some of that chancel is the old chapel, the old north chapel. So now that's very good then. And you can see here we've got Michael Strutt, second son of Baron Belper. He was a pilot officer of the Royal Canadian Air Force and killed in active service in 1942. But that nave is obviously straight up. It's imitation. Imitation. Start again. Imitation decorated. And then we've got the grave of the fourth Baron Belper, Alexander Ronald George Strutt, who died in 1999. So it's a very... this is the grave of the second Baron Belper. We've got this nice Celtic cross. You can see it's got these dragons fighting each other on it, which is rather fun. And round to the tower, which is the thing that's very much, the tower is echoing the chancel. It's saying, well, the great treasure of this building is this Tudor chancel, therefore let's emphasise this. Let's talk about this in terms of the architecture, rather than trying to just say, oh, well, let's do something. So there we have the Lich Gate. That again, of course, is 1900. The village is very much an estate village, and that's all right. Estate villages, very often some of the most picturesque villages in England are estate villages. And so there we have the porch with St Winifred, because somebody couldn't read somebody else's handwriting. I should talk, my handwriting is awful. So there we have it, St Winifred's, Kingston on Soar. And so there you have it, St Winifred's, Kingston on Soar. It's notable here that this is one of those really glaring cases where antiquarians got the dedication wrong. Sometimes it's because of looking at the wrong documents. They're looking at documents that deal with the parish, but the church referred to is actually not the church in the parish. And sometimes, as here, it's as simple as somebody couldn't read somebody else's handwriting and assumed that Wilfred was Winifred. In fact, it's actually much more common for churches around here to be St Wilfred's. But there we are, we ended up with St Winifred's, and by the time anyone realised the mistake had been made, it was too late, so they just rolled with it. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.